For over 100 years, people driving a lonely stretch of railroad track outside Wilmington, North Carolina, swore they saw a light, not a car, not a lantern held by a person walking. A light that hung in the air above the rails, swinging gently back and forth, like someone signaling a train that would never come. They called it the Maco Light, and it started with a man who was trying to save a trainload of strangers and failed. This is the story of Joe Baldwin, the light that carried his name for over a century, and the night it finally went dark for good. Let's go back to the 1800s, rural Brunswick County, North Carolina, a tiny stop on the Wilmington and Manchester Railroad called Farmer's Turnout, later renamed Maco Station. Swampland on either side of the tracks, thick with cypress and standing water, the kind of place where a lantern light could carry a long way in the dark. Joe Baldwin worked that line. Most versions of the story call him a conductor or a brakeman, riding in the rear car of a train making its way toward Wilmington on a rainy night. Somewhere along that stretch, disaster found him in the simplest, cruelest way a railroad accident can happen. His car came uncoupled from the rest of the train. He was alone in the dark, rolling to a stop on the open track, and he knew something the passengers behind him didn't. Another train was coming up fast on the same line. Baldwin didn't run. He grabbed his lantern, stepped onto the rear platform of the stalled car, and started swinging that light as hard as he could, the universal signal for stop, stop, stop. The oncoming train never slowed down. The two trains collided in the dark. Baldwin was killed instantly. Some versions of the story say he was decapitated in the impact, his head thrown into the swamp, and never recovered. He was, by most tellings, the only person who died that night. Everyone on the second train, the one he tried to warn, survived. He gave his life trying to stop a wreck that was never going to include him at all. Not long after Baldwin was buried, people who worked the Maco line started noticing something. A light far off down the tracks, small at first, like a lantern held at a great distance. It would grow closer and closer until it was the size of a lantern held right in front of you, swinging left, then right, then left again. Exactly the motion of a man trying to flag down a train. Then, just as you brace for it to be a real light, a real lantern, a real person standing on the tracks, it would vanish. Word spread fast. Railroad workers reported it. Passengers reported it. It happened often enough and consistently enough that the Atlantic Coastline Railroad, the company that eventually ran the tracks through Maco, gave its engineers a standing order. If you see the light, do not stop the train. Think about how strange that is. A major American railroad company on the record telling its crews not to treat a light on the tracks as a real signal, because everyone already knew what it probably was. The Maco Light wasn't a one-time sighting or a single spooked passenger story. This thing was reported for over 100 years. Locals took visitors out to the tracks specifically to see it. It became one of the most talked about ghost stories in the entire American South, discussed in newspapers and folklore collections, even, according to some accounts, by a foreign head of state passing through the area, curious enough to ask about the legend himself. People tried to explain it, of course. Some said it was swamp gas, pockets of methane igniting naturally above the wetlands. Some said it was the reflection of headlights from a nearby highway bending strangely through the humid Carolina air. Some said it was foxfire, the pale glow given off by certain fungi and rotting wood. None of those explanations ever fully satisfied the people who'd actually stood on those tracks and watched the light swing back and forth, approach, and disappear. Because a swamp gas flare doesn't move like a man signaling a train, and it doesn't only show up on an active railroad line where a man died trying to do exactly that. Here's the part of the story that a lot of people don't know. In 1977, the Seaboard